Here we go, we're ready for Josh.
All right. Not necessary. Okay, so yeah, for you new folks, just a little bit about me. Like Mark said, I've been involved in healthcare for about 25 years. 10 of it as an instructor at the University in St. George. Nursing, paramedic, firefighter, police officer, homesteader, government contractor, redneck. Okay. Grew up in very rural Florida. We had one stoplight in the entire county, one high school, an elementary school, and then a K through 12 that was half an hour away. So I grew up on a farm. So a lot of fun practical experience there. I'm a huge advocate of self-reliant living, taking care of yourself, doing things yourself, not relying on outside resources. And so Well Prepared was a perfect fit. That's kind of like Mark's trying to do. And since I'm an educator, we're going to teach all the fun stuff that I've accumulated over the last 45 years. Speaking of which, today is part 3 of a 4-part series of medical classes that we've got going on. The first 2 were everything that you could get in a normal American heart, first aid, and CPR class, with a few extra stuff thrown in. So if you feel like you're getting ripped off because you missed the first 2, don't feel bad. We can teach those to you too. This one is going to be focusing, it's more advanced stuff. We wanted to make sure that you were able to take care of yourself or people around you until permanent qualified help could arrive. Which is all about the legal disclaimer coming up here in a second. I'm not a doctor, okay? And nothing in this class or series of classes is designed to tell you that you don't need to go see a doctor. There's a reason doctors do what they do. They do an excellent job at what they do, and they stink at what they don't do. Chiropractors do a great job at what they do, and they stink at what they don't do. Herbalists do a great job at what they do. Same thing with traditional Chinese medicine, massage therapists, physical therapists. All the different healthcare specialties out there do an excellent job at what they do, but they don't do what they don't do. So one of the things that we always experienced in the healthcare business, especially in the emergency rooms where I worked primarily, is that we were always frustrated for people coming in for stuff that they could take care of at home. Using up resources, personnel time, beds, for things that we thought were common sense. But unless you're taught it, you don't know it. So one of the purposes of these classes is to help you identify the stuff that you can take care of at home, and when you can't take care of it at home, and go to a hospital, a doctor, naturopath, yogi, whatever you choose to do for your licensed healthcare. But don't let anything in these presentations just deter you from going to get licensed healthcare. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so let's talk about some of the herbs we're going to talk about today. Wild lettuce, and the ones with stars up by them are all really commonly available spices and seasonings, so I don't have slides on them, but we're going to talk about them. Wild lettuce, ginger, chaparral, also known as greasewood, lobelia or Indian tobacco, poplar bark. This is your willows, quakies, good heavens, any of the poplar trees that fall into it. Mullein, yarrow, comfrey and calendula, also known as marigolds, honey, pine sap, echinacea, and garlic. Now, I realize this is not an exhaustive list of herbs. Okay, this is quick local things that grow here really easy to find, and they will treat most of the general stuff that you go to your regular family doctor for all the time. Does that kind of make sense? Now, this is in addition to all the stuff we talked about in the first part of the class with the emergency medicine stuff. All this is in addition to that. Okay? So let's just talk about ginger real quick. Who's ever had ginger ale? Yeah? Do you remember the old grandma saying, oh, if you have an upset stomach, drink some ginger ale?
Yep.
There was a reason why. Ginger is excellent as an antiemetic, anti-nausea, vomiting medication. Okay, Candied Ginger is my preferred way to take it. The little Candied Ginger squares you get at the health food store or Harmon's or anywhere else. Coated in sugar, very well preserved. Just a little tiny piece about the size of this marker. Chew it, suck on it, do whatever you want. Fixes nausea and vomiting pretty well. It's good for a lot of other things too, but that's what its primary medicinal use is anti-nausea and vomiting.
What if the vomiting is needed to get rid of something?
Okay, we'll talk about it in a little bit later on. Yes, there's a lot of things that our bodies do that we think are problems that are not. It's your body trying to heal itself. So what I'm talking about is if you've got nausea and vomiting that is emptied your stomach and you can't stop. That's not good. That leads to esophageal tears in your throat and bleeding and ulcers and dry heaves and cramping and trouble breathing and all kinds of fun stuff. Good, you're right. Vomiting is a body's protective measure. So is diarrhea, so are fevers. Those are not our enemies. Those are our friends a lot of the times. You're taking care of somebody naturally. Good question. Any other questions about ginger? We'll get more in depth and stuff later on. Poplar bark. Like I said, anything that's in the poplar family, from willows to quakies, is the original source for aspirin. The inner bark has a chemical called salicylin in it, salicylic acid, and that's exactly what aspirin is. It's a manufactured salicylic acid. It's called acetyl salicylic acid, or aspirin, ASA. So if you need general pain relief or blood thinning, I hate calling it blood thinning. It's not blood thinning, it's anti-thickening. Okay? If you have blood clotting problems, poplar bark is a wonderful natural way to do that. And you get extra fiber. Yes, sir?
So what do you do, boil it to get the...
You can boil it, you can chew it, just take it straight out of the tree. It's bitter. Who's ever bitten onto an aspirin before? Or let it dissolve in your mouth on accident? How'd it taste? Nasty, terrible, really bitter, and had a pucker factor to it. This poplar bark is going to be exactly the same way. But you can boil it into a tea, you can add honey to it or whatever you want to it, peppermint, make it more palatable. The ingredients are still the same. Okay, it's a super good for general, anything you would take an aspirin for. Honey. Oh, I love honey. Honey is one of my favorite things in the whole world. It was the first antibiotic that we ever used. Honey was. And if you get local honey, it helps you with your seasonal allergies. So if you've got seasonal allergies, local honey, make sure it really is local and not rented out to California or someplace and then brought back here. And they call it local honey, but it's not. It's really California honey. Make sure it's a local hive that never leaves. Extremely good for topical application of wounds and infections. The sugar content in it, there's a principle in your body called osmosis. Do you guys remember hearing this term someplace? Okay, the principle of osmosis is that water is always going to try to dissolve high concentrations of salts and sugars. So there's a lot of sugar in honey. If you apply it to a wound, any bacteria that are growing on it, the water is going to leave the bacteria and try to dissolve the honey. So regular sugar does the same thing. The Napoleonic Wars, that's what they used on the battlefield, was just handloads of sugar and battle wounds, trying to keep them clean. Keep in mind, it's going to kill your body cells around it too. So don't use it prolifically, but to keep it, if it's getting infected, smear some honey on there. Great antibiotic. Pine sap, same thing. Except that it's got extra oils and phenols and glycerides in it that are extremely great for fighting infection, and it seals up a wound really well. So one of the wound treatment salves that I mix myself has got honey and pine sap and comfrey and marigold and tea tree oil and beeswax. And I mix all those together, and that is one of the best antibiotic salves. Beats Neosporin hands down. Except you can't put it in your eyes. Neosporin you can. So we'll get to that one too later on. And the last one is garlic. I'd always heard that garlic was wonderful as an antibiotic. And it is. My son did a science experiment one time where we took a lot of these natural antibiotics and some commercial antibiotics, and we did petri dishes, and we put bacteria into them and did a sensitivity test to see which ones worked the best. And garlic and oregano and rosemary, which you talked about before, did far better than any of the commercial antibiotics on killing the bacteria. So if you've ever had somebody who had eaten a lot of garlic, and as they're talking and breathing, you smell that wonderful garlic smell, even if they brush their teeth, you still smell it. It's because it's gone into their bloodstream and it's coming out their lungs. So garlic is super good for respiratory infections. Okay? That smell that you're smelling is all the volatile oils and phenols and things in garlic. Allicin, which is the best part of it. Sounds like penicillin, doesn't it? Works on the same antibiotics. Coming out through their lungs, so it's great for respiratory problems.
Isn't garlic also a good antiviral?
It's antiviral, it's anti-cholesterol, it's blood pressure lowering, it's delicious.
It tastes good.
Tastes good. I love garlic.
Okay, how would you apply it to use it as an antibiotic besides eating it?
I would make a poultice out of it. Okay? Poultice, washes, oils. In fact, for earaches, which we cover later on, there's a wonderful ear infection oil that's made from mullein flowers and garlic. And it's fabulous. Works just as good, if not better, than Augmentin for an ear infection. But we'll get to that. So any questions about the starch stuff? Pretty simple, really readily available. It's the other stuff that people are like, how do I find chaparral? What's it look like? Wild lettuce. This is a weed, isn't it?
Yeah, it grows all
Grows all over the place. You're pulling it out of your gardens. You're pulling it out of your lawns. This is the most potent natural pain reliever that's not opium in existence. It works in the same spot in your brain that opium, morphine, heroin, everything else does, but it's not habit forming. It's not addictive. And this is a plant that has it's called a biennial. It's got 2 life cycles. The first life cycle looks like this, the first year of growth. Wonderful to eat this. It's a little bit bitter as it gets older. Get the younger leaves, throw it in a salad. It's better than dandelions. Very nutritious, lots of vitamins. The second year, it's going to send up a stalk like this. The flowers kind of look like dandelion flowers. Not quite as big. They do get fluffy and make a little fluff too. This is where you're going to get the sap that you can use as a pain reliever. But just like opium, it does, because it affects your brain in similar ways, it does affect your breathing as well, just like all your other opiates, your Lortabs, your Percocets, morphine, fentanyl, Dilaudid, heroin, all that other stuff. It slows it down. It decreases your need to breathe. So it's possible to overdose on this, but it's really hard to do. Whereas it's really easy to overdose on heroin and those other stuff because it affects your breathing a lot. This affects it a little bit. So just be a little bit careful using this if you already have sleep apnea or things like that to where you're not breathing very well at night. I wouldn't take wild lettuce before going to bed. Take something else for your pain. Other than that, extremely difficult to overdose on wild lettuce. It's got natural counteracting agents inside of it so that you can take it and take it and take it and take it until you get relief and then stop. unlike your opium-based stuff, where if you take it and take it and take it, you build up a tolerance to it, and you take more and more and more until you stop breathing.
So you just eat the stalks?
Nope. What you do, take a knife, and you want to score it. Just make a small cut, and it'll weep out this milky, sticky sap, and that's how you harvest it. You can take, what I usually do is I'll go to the top, and I'll cut the top and pour it and let it drip into a little measuring cup. And when it stops, I make a new cut and keep going down the stalk until I get about half a cup to a cup of the stuff. And then you evaporate it, concentrate it to a thick syrup. It turns black, just like heroin, so I wouldn't carry it around in your cars. It won't test positive as an opiate. It's not an opiate.
So the leaves on the older plant are still good?
Oh, they're bitter. Really bitter.
They'll still do the same thing?
They'll still feed you and stuff, and you can make teas out of it, but it's not as strong as the sap. The sap is the good stuff. So if you just have minor aches and stuff, sure, make a tea out of the leaves. It'll help, but the sap is really the pain relieving.
So can you take the sap while it's milky, or do you have to make it go black?
You can take it while it's milky. Yeah, absolutely. I just like to concentrate, and then I take a small amount and not have to worry about it. And then I'm not taking a quarter cup of sticky, slimy, milky stuff. Yeah, nasty tasting. Yes, you can do it in a tincture form very easily, and that's what I prefer it as a tincture. That way the alcohol helps you absorb it way faster under your tongue. And you get pain relief almost instantaneously, within about 30, 40 seconds. So wild lettuce, not just a weed. Yarrow. This grows prolifically around here, especially at about 6,000 feet and above. It also is a biennial. So its first life starts out as these little feathery leaves in little bunches, probably no bigger than the palm of your hand. And the second year, it gets bigger and it sends up this big branch. The leaves of yarrow are extremely beneficial in controlling bleeding. Its Latin name is Achilles something other. It was based off of Achilles from the old Greek mythology. You guys remember that? Where he had the one weak spot in his heel. The mythology is that they used yarrow to control the bleeding and saved his life from the wound that he got. So they named it after Achilles.
Internally or externally?
Doesn't matter. If you want to take it internally, make a tea. If you want it externally, just take the powder and dump it on whatever you've got going on. Or I prefer put it in some cheesecloth and then pack it onto it. It actually contains enzymes inside of it that increase blood clotting. So it actually helps to clot your blood. So if you have problems with heart attacks and strokes, I wouldn't take it internally. Does that make sense? It's going to increase your ability to clot. Much better than just vitamin K. It actually has clotting enzymes in it. The flowers are just pretty, but they also go right into your teas. You're going to find that when you get into herbs, the time of the year that you use the herb is going to change depending on which part of the plant you're trying to use. If you want leaves, you want early spring. If you want flowers, you want wait till they bloom. If you want roots, you do it in the fall when the plant dies and all the energy is going back into the roots. So it's going to change depending on what you're doing. Spreads extremely easily. I brought some down from the mountain one time in a flower pot, and within 2 or 3 weeks, I had 6 plants. Because it sends out runners just like strawberries, but it's much more effective than strawberries. So it multiplies itself really easy. It can take over your flower bed if you let it, so just kind of be careful. But extremely good for bleeding control and respiratory infections. Chaparral. This is greasewood or creosote bush. It doesn't like our elevation, but it grows really well at about 3,000 feet, which is Hurricane St. George and that area. This is probably one of the most potent antivirals in this area. So if you're looking for stuff to treat herpes lesions, swine flu, the flu, any viral-based something, this is my go-to for it for this area. And it's the leaves off the plant. It's going to be a great big spindly-looking bush, just like this. It actually was taken down in St. George. Gray, silvery limbs with these little teeny tiny, thick, heavy, kind of almost sticky leaves. They look like this. It's got yellow flowers, little fuzzy seed pods, very thick, waxy, almost sticky leaves. You make a medicinal tea out of this. And keep in mind, herbal teas and medicinal teas are totally different. What you guys have been doing with the herbal tea packets and stuff and making this really weak tea is not a medicinal tea. A medicinal tea, you take as much of the herb as you can, you pack it in the container you're using, cover it with water, and boil it. Low simmer. And then when you're done, you get out maybe a cup of liquid out of it. It's extremely strong. That's a medicinal tea. Herbal teas are recreational. You're not really getting a benefit from it. Make a medicinal tea out of this, and if you've got a cold, flu, virus, whatever, herpes outbreaks, shingles outbreaks, this will help get rid of it. Lobelia, Indian tobacco. It's a very common ornamental flower. You'll see it in flower beds all the time. People have no idea what it is. This is your asthma buster. Okay, this is an excellent bronchodilator. It takes the tubes inside your lungs and helps them relax and open up so you can breathe. My wife about had a cow when I made a cigarette for my youngest son to fix his asthma. And she's like, "You're not giving our son a cigarette." I'm like, "Yeah, I am. It's a Lobelia cigarette. You don't have to take it this way. With essential oils and things, you can get it and or tinctures and put it into a nebulizer. Works just as good." I thought it'd be fun to give my kid a smoke. So we rolled the smoke, and he smoked when he was having an asthma attack. And sure enough, it stopped his asthma attack. So however you want to do it, nebulizers work just as well. So after that, we did nebulizers. But I'd always heard you could smoke it, so let's try smoking it. And it works. Not just for asthma, though. Pneumonias, bronchitis, cystic fibrosis, anything where you've got congestion building up in your lungs, Lobelia is an excellent herb for that. It opens them up, and it has what's called expectorant properties. Have you guys ever taken Mucinex for a cough or a cold, trying to get stuff out? It works just like Mucinex does. It makes the mucus in your lungs thinner, so you can cough it out and get it out easier. Works great for sinus infections, too. So super, super, super versatile ornamental flower. Mullein. Again, wonderful biennial, 2 life stages. The first life stage looks like this. And if you've ever seen these little fuzzy, thick, feels like a dog's ear or a lamb's ear, Indian toilet paper. It's super tough, it's durable, it makes a great toilet paper substitute in the wild. It's also super good for respiratory infections, the leaves. And it doesn't matter which life cycle, the younger, the smaller the leaf, the better.
Chew on it.
You can chew on it, you can make capsules out of it, you can make teas out of it. I like teas better. It's just a faster way to take it. Capsules take too long, in my opinion. But this is not one. Again, a lot of these herbs you're going to find, you always hear about herbs being, you have to take them for a while before they work. And that's true for a lot of herbal stuff. Everything in these classes is what we call acute medicine, so it will work now. It's not a permanent fix. It doesn't cure asthma. It treats the symptoms just like doctors' medicines do. It's not fixing the problem, it's just treating the symptoms. Okay? You need to figure out what's causing your illness to get rid of it. This is just going to treat symptoms. Super good. In the second year of its life, it sends up these wonderful stalks of these beautiful yellow flowers. This goes into your earache medicines. Just the yellow flower part, not the green base that it's in, not the green stalk. Just pick the yellow flowers. You mix that with garlic and olive oil, and you have got the best earache medicine out there. It's super fabulous. Comfrey and Calendula, or Marigold. I love these because they fall into a class of herb that's called vulvinaries, which is a big fancy word for skin supporting. So these actually have enzymes in them that when you take them or apply them externally, they help repair tissue way faster than you would imagine. And that includes broken bones. They're just fabulous. And again, you're going to use the leaves from the comfrey plant and the flowers, not the leaves, from the marigolds. Mix them together, soak them in oils, make infusions or teas, make decoctions, tinctures, poultices, compresses, doesn't matter. However you use these, it's going to help heal tissue wherever it is. So if you've got a sprained ankle that's bruising, throw a comfrey and marigold poultice on it. It'll heal within 24, 48 hours. Got a broken arm? Throw some on the outside and take it internally. Yes, ma'am.
I broke my foot on a quad once. I broke it 3 different bones, one bone in 3 places.
Not good.
You could see the skin was covering it. You could see the bone protruding out from the skin, okay? And there were other people looking at it, and they gave me some comfrey. And about a half an hour later, all of a sudden, I thought I was going to pass out. It was horrible pain, but those bones moved and set themselves. And people were watching, they were watching going, whoa, look at that.
That's not possible.
Okay, so
it is.
It was on a Sunday. I waited till Monday and I went to the doctor. The doctor said that was the first time he'd ever seen that type of a fracture not needing surgery.
Right. Usually bones in your feet, if they're broken in more than one place, require pins. I worked for an orthopedist here in town for 5 years, and we did lots of stuff like that. And it was so frustrating not to tell these people, hey, don't do surgery. Go home and take some bone knit and comfrey and calendula instead. It was so hard not to do that. But
is that common for it to actually move the bone?
it is, and it's kind of a weird effect that it has. Your bones, you know, you think of a bone, right? Well, it actually has a sheath, a lining that goes all the way around that bone called the periosteum, okay, which is just Latin for on top of the bone. When you get a break or a fracture and the bone moves and displaces, this periosteum is still intact. The bone is still actually encased inside that periosteum most of the time. There are a few times where it pops out and comes out of your body, and in which case it's ruptured it. But what comfrey and bone knit, it's another herb, that do is they tighten and tone that periosteum, and it will literally help realign the bones that are broken. It will help set them on its own, which is why the herb was called bone set. You'd take it and it would set your bones for you. Now obviously if it's grossly deformed, there's going to have to be some manipulation goes into it. That's next class. Okay? But if it's just broken and fractured, offset, a green stick, or a spiral fracture, all these different types of bone breaks, it will help reset them. A friend of mine who's a chiropractor here in town was water skiing. Well, he was using an air chair, which was totally, if you don't know what it is, don't worry about it. It's a chair that you sit on that you slide along the water on a fin under the water. Horribly insane thing to do. Well, he got his arm caught in the rope and it snapped his wrist. And he kind of reset it himself, but it was taking a long time to heal, and it was horribly bruised and painful and swollen. And I said, throw some comfrey on it. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, just throw some comfrey on it. And he said, okay. And he made a poultice and he put it on it and wrapped it in saran wrap. I love saran wrap, by the way. You'll find that I'm a huge advocate of saran wrap. And everywhere that comfrey wasn't bruised anymore. Everywhere the comfrey wasn't was black and blue and yellow and green and painful to the touch and swollen. Everywhere the comfrey was The tissue was reduced and the swelling was gone and it was healing. His fractured wrist, how long does it take for a bone to heal usually? 6 to 8, almost minimum, right? 3 weeks. 3 weeks and his wrist was fine. He could go back to work as a chiropractor using his wrist. Yeah, to do adjustments. So, Comfrey, huge fan of it.
So, what's the difference between Comfrey and
Marigolds.
They're all the same thing?
Marigold supports skin regrowth a little bit better. So does Comfrey. And it smells better. Some people think marigolds stink, but I like them.
So Comfrey is the one on the left.
Comfrey is the purple one here on the left.
And Marigold
Is the yellow one on that side. And again, you're going to use just the flower petals from the marigolds. If you mix the two together, they increase the effect of either one by itself. And marigold is super good for repairing skin tissues, burns, cuts, wounds, diabetic ulcers, things like that. Super good for that. Together, they work even better together.
I was just going to say that calendula actually doesn't smell like a traditional marigold. It
Right.
is a better smell.
It's a better
If you have-
smell.
If you have a problem with the way marigolds smell, you'll probably be okay with this one.
Yeah.
Especially after they're dried.
Yeah, I love them. In fact, I dry both, soak them in oil, and I do lots of fun things with the oils.
The other thing that's really nice is the calendula, well, the Comfrey does too, but calendula freely self-seeds into your flower
Mhm.
beds. And it looks like a pretty yellow flower in your yard, so you're growing this nice big swath of medicinal herbs, and everybody in the neighborhood just thinks you're growing pretty yellow flowers.
Oh, those
They
are so
don't know what it
pretty.
is, And that's, it's a nice one to grow, and you put it anywhere and not have people look at you like, what are you growing in your front yard?
Now, I do have to give you a small warning about Comfrey. It's got a bad reputation of being toxic. Okay? It is. In the very first leaves of spring. The very first leaves that regrow and resprout in spring contain a lot of a substance called an alkaloid that can be toxic if taken internally. So if you want to use Comfrey, when it first grows, pick those first leaves that come off, save those for your poultices and compresses and things like that. Don't use those in teas. The second growth after that, totally safe. So I always give a little bit of a warning and caveat with Comfrey. It can be toxic if you use the very first leaves in spring. Other than that, it's fine to use. It's not toxic. Yes, ma'am.
I was also told that if it starts making you feel a little woozy,
Stop.
sick to your stomach, yeah, that's your indication. And so it was a really easy for me to know how much not to take.
Yeah, and in all of this stuff, what most doctors forget to tell you is listen to your body. If you take an herbal supplement or a medication and you go, yeah, I didn't like that, don't take it again. Or maybe not right now. Try it again later. Your body will tell you what it needs and what it doesn't need. So if you're trying some supplements or medications and you just don't like it, stop. Your body will heal itself eventually. All these things do is help your body to heal itself. These are not magic pills. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, Echinacea, or purple coneflower, and cinnamon. I get a lot of questions a lot of the time about which cinnamon is the best cinnamon. Do I want Saigon cinnamon? Do I want cassia cinnamon? Do I want these other cinnamons? Not all cinnamons are the same. The one that you want for medicinal purposes is cassia cinnamon.
I thought that was pronounced acacia.
Acacia, cassia, potato, tomato. Get the one that's spelled like this. Okay? And the way that you can tell them apart when they're in the sticks is that the cassia will always have this really nice, tight spiral. Whereas the other one that you can get here in the U.S. has got more of a loose, open. it still works. It's just not as effective. The most effective one is Cassia, Acacia, however you want to pronounce it. And fortunately, it's also the one that's most commonly available here in the U.S. Echinacea. Anybody who's studied herbs even just a little bit has heard about Echinacea, right? This is a super, super good immune system stimulant. So again, if you're getting sick or a cold or an infection or you're hurt, no matter what your problem is, your immune system is going to be taking care of it. This is an excellent herb to support that and make it stronger. So before flu season comes, start taking a little bit of Calendula, or not Calendula, Echinacea. Yes, ma'am.
Which part of the plant do you use?
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
The flowers, the petals, the leaves, the stems, the root, the whole thing.
Make it a tea.
Make a tea out of it. Or capsules.
Someone's told me that extended use, your body builds up a resistance to it.
Not a resistance to it. It's on.
It becomes less effective.
Not even less effective. It just, all of these things are short-term uses. Whereas like some herbs you need to take over a long period of time to build up a level for them to work. All of the things that we're covering in these classes are acute short-term use things, 5-10 days. It's not that your body becomes used to it or tolerant or whatever. It just, you can only stimulate your immune system to do so much, and then it can't do anymore.
So if you stop using it and then use it again later,
It'll still work, absolutely. But if you take it for more than about a week, 2 weeks, you've ramped it up as far as you can go. If you step on your gas pedal and you floor it, you're not going to go any faster than your car can drive. Okay? That's just kind of the way it works. So it's not that it doesn't work anymore. It's done its job.
Point of diminishing returns.
Yeah, diminishing returns. The more you take, the less of an increase you're going to get because it's already ramped up as high as it can go.
So which one is the flower, the cinnamon or the echinacea?
Oh, the echinacea. Sorry, yeah. Known as purple coneflower is echinacea.
Plant.
So this is your immune stimulant flower. And again, these can all be planted in your flower beds, and they're beautiful. And they will think and they're easy to grow. And they self-propagate, and they're hard to get rid of sometimes. And they're beautiful. And again, people think you're growing a wonderful flower bed, and it's all medicines.
To make a tea, can you take the plant and dry it out
You can dry it, use it fresh, doesn't matter.
and save it for later?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I prefer teas not from powders. I like them a little bit chunky. They're easier to filter. If you powder it, it's easier to get more medicinal purposes out of it. It just depends on what you want to do. So I use more when I use medicinal anyway.
Dice it up and save it dry?
Sure.
How do you measure how much you use?
Don't worry about it. That's the nice thing about herbs. With a lot of your medications, they have to be so many milligrams because they are distilled and filtered and isolated down to a certain compound. And they have what's called a therapeutic index, which means that when it works is right here, down here it doesn't work, and up here it's toxic. So you have to get so many milligrams of a medication. Herbs, take a pound, take half a pound, take 10 pounds. When you get sick of drinking it, quit drinking it. It's the nice thing about herbs, is that it's really hard to overdose on herbs. And it's really hard to underdose on herbs. Just take some, and if it works, keep taking it until it doesn't work, and then stop. It's really nice. That's why I like them a little bit better than medications.
What about cinnamon?
Yeah, what is that?
Oh, cinnamon was from the first class. Remember that? Diabetes,
That's
cholesterol reduction. Remember, you mix that with turmeric and black pepper, and according to new studies, it's the cure for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes.
yeah, I have it in my notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cinnamon is It's a wonderful. It's a sugar, blood sugar balancing herb. It helps your body balance your blood sugar levels. And it tastes good in
What were you
cookies.
mixing it with?
Turmeric and black pepper. 1 gram of turmeric, 250 grams of black pepper. Mix those together, and however many capsules that makes, take that each day. It's supposed to be the cure for diabetes. I don't have it. I haven't cured it yet, but it sure helped my uncle who does have diabetes. So he doesn't take insulin.
Say the formula again, how much cinnamon?
Cinnamon you can use sparingly, anywhere from 500 milligrams
So 1 gram of turmeric?
to 1 gram of turmeric and 25 or 250 milligrams of black pepper.
And then capsule.
Encapsulate it. Yep. Again, I don't claim that it cures diabetes, but there's some studies that have come out that say that it does.
And it doesn't matter how much on that either? Or is it-
Well, yeah, that's how much you take each day.
Oh, that's what you take.
Yep, each day.
One capsule a day.
No, 1 gram.
Oh, 1 gram.
So however many capsules that makes, spread it out throughout the day. The study that came out said that anywhere from 1 gram to 6 grams of turmeric and black pepper, in those proportions, over a 4-month period, cured, I want to say it was like 94% of the people in the study that had diabetes. The people who took the 6 grams had faster results. The people who took 1 gram a day had longer lasting results and effects. So it was more stable.
So I'm confused, if I'm saying 500 grams and 250
Milligrams. Milligrams.
500
Milligrams.
of cinnamon,
1 gram of turmeric and 250 milligrams.
and that makes,
I don't know, like 6 capsules. Spread it over the day. So you've got 500 milligrams of cinnamon.
are we talking, well, this is powder. So
Powders. Yep, powdered cinnamon. 1 gram of turmeric. And 250 milligrams of black, not white, black pepper.
I've heard red pepper works too.
Not for diabetes.
Oh, but,
It works for blood pressure.
okay, that's,
Yep, works for blood pressure. Total different plants. We call them all peppers, but these are not like jalapenos and habaneros and cayenne. These are a different total plant that we're taking the seeds and we're grinding the seed grains from. It's not really a pepper. So it's a total different plant. Works a total different way in your body. So black pepper, not white pepper, used to be the black pepper. Cool, any other questions so far?
does it make a difference on cinnamon for that one?
Yeah.
Cassia works better.
Eh.
Cassia works better.
Oh, as far as the cinnamons? Yeah, the cassia or acacia works better. So when you go to Costco and get the Saigon cinnamon, yeah, it's very not potent at all. But most of the other cinnamons in the grocery stores are the cassia cinnamon. I just get the bark and powder it myself. That way I know which one I'm getting for sure. Good questions. Any other questions? No. Is that saying 12? 11. Our clock is wrong. Okay. Okay, the last one on the list is ephedra. This is also known as Brigham tea, Mormon tea. In traditional Chinese medicine, it's called Ma Huang. Remember those diet pills from the 80s and the 90s, Fin? Do you guys remember those at all? That had high amounts of ephedra in it. And they pulled them off the market because it was giving people not heart attacks so much, but supraventricular tachycardia, making the heart beat way too fast. There's a reason. Ephedra sounds a lot like pseudoephedrine, right? Your cough medicines that they make methamphetamines out of. It does the same thing. It raises up your heart rate. It dilates your bronchioles. It works like adrenaline does. Does that kind of make sense? This falls into a class of chemicals in your body called a catecholamine. It's a stimulant. So what it does when you make a tea out of this, or a tincture, I like tinctures better of this, but teas are fine. It has kind of a lemony flavor when you make a tea out of it. Is that it will do everything that adrenaline does for your body. Increases your heart rate, dilates your lungs, constricts your blood vessels in your skin and your gut, but dilates the blood vessels in your muscles and your brain. It makes you more alert. It's that whole fight or flight reflex that our bodies have. This stimulates it right down there with your adrenal glands. So it's a natural source for chemicals like epinephrine. Who's heard of an Epipen for allergies? Yep. So I like a tincture. It works fast. You can use this like you do an Epipen for allergies.
So you just ingest it?
Yep, put it under your tongue. Yep. If you drink it as a tea, it's going to take half an hour to work. If you take it as a tincture, drop it under your tongue, you get an effect within less than a minute.
What's a tincture?
A tincture is where you take an herb or roots or bark or things like that, and you sit it in alcohol. And the alcohol dissolves different things than water does. More of your resins, your alkalis, things like that. So you're going to put it in alcohol. And depending on if it's a fresh herb or if it's a dried herb, the two best alcohols to use are Everclear for the fresh herbs and then vodka for the dried herbs. Everclear is 180 proof. It's 90% alcohol. If you've got a wet herb, it's going to pull the water out of it and it will dilute the alcohol down. Whereas you have a dry herb or roots, you want to use vodka instead. It's only about 80 proof, so it's about 50% alcohol. It's got more water in it. But the alcohol dissolves different compounds in the plants than just plain water does. If you don't like the idea of using alcohols, you can get a lot of the same benefits, same properties using glycerin instead. But it's such a small amount of alcohol that I don't feel bad telling my bishop that, yes, I keep the word of wisdom. You get more alcohol in mouthwash and cough syrups than you do in these tinctures. We're talking drops. So 5 to 10 drops, and that's it.
How long does it usually take to make it?
About 2 weeks. In fact, if you come to the herbal preparations class that we're going to hold, we'll teach you how to do those. Teach you how to do tinctures and lozenges and fomentations and decoctions and teas and poultices and compresses and all that kind of stuff.
Cool thing is tinctures last a long time.
Forever. They almost don't expire. Your oils last about a year, 2 years max. Tinctures last forever. Glycerin doesn't last as long as tinctures. 2 to 3 years is the longest I would use a glycerin. And it has a lot of the similar properties of like dissolving chemicals as the alcohol does, but not the same. So depending on what I'm using, I'll use glycerins for some things and tinctures for some things, and I'll use decoctions or fomentations or teas for the other things.
The nice thing about glycerin is it's really great for kids because it creates kind of a sweetness and makes it more palatable. The alcohol tinctures are really intense, and so kids have a hard time.
Yeah. Unless your kids are lushes, in which case.
Yeah.
I've used tinctures on my kids for years, and they're used to the little bit, because it burns a little bit. It's got a little bit of a bite to it. Just like alcohol does. It's not gentle.
Stuff, so it's not
Yeah, I'm giving my kids cigarettes and booze, you know.
Okay, so
Yes, sir.
vodka for dry herbs?
Vodka for dry herbs. It has more water in it. So the water kind of hydrates the herb, and then the alcohol pulls out the good stuff. Where if you use a high concentration alcohol like Everclear, it's not going to hydrate the herb, and it's not going to penetrate as deep. So fresh herbs, Everclear. And you can get Everclear by the pint bottle, and a pint bottle makes a lot of tinctures, guys, for like $4. It's not that expensive. Just as long as you don't mind being seen at the state liquor store buying it, it's
Is there Everclear there?
yeah.
It's, 101.
What's that?
You can't get it on the shelves.
Oh, they can't on the shelves anymore. Even the little pint, even the little pint jars.
You have to ask for it. It's,
Oh, okay. I was about to say they should still have it. You just have to ask for it. What about Goldschlager?
It's still on shelves.
Okay, it's about the same stuff, but nastier. Okay, ephedra. I love it. It's great for respiratory problems, alertness problems, anything that you would need, allergic reactions, anything where you need that kind of that stimulant effect. Great thing. If you got somebody who's been sick for a while and they're just really weak and have no energy, mix a little ephedra in the preparations that you're giving them, and it will give them a pep. But keep in mind, just like caffeine and any of the stimulants, there's a downside to it too. Okay, so give them a little bit and then stop because they need to recover afterwards. Just a little bit goes a long ways.
I should use ephedra on my long car rides when I'm driving for a long way.
Yes, please do not use a 5-hour energy drink. That is, hands down, one of the worst things you can do to your body. So, any questions about the herbs? Here in a second, we're going to cover a lot of different health problems and give you dosages and how to take care of them. Let's talk about some medications really quick. I realize that these are not the designer antibiotics and antimicrobials, but there's a reason why I have these on the list. Okay? We always get the question, can I just use veterinary stuff? And the answer is yes. It is made in the same labs, the same factories, the same tablet, the same serial number on the tablets, the same dosages, the same concentrations. They are prescription grade, pharmaceutical grade antibiotics and antimicrobials. So why don't they say you can use those? Follow the money. Okay? They cannot sell them to the public at non-regulated, non-pharmaceutical through a pharmacy unless they say specifically not for human use. Then they can sell them to the public because they're for fish and birds and things like that. Okay? They are the same antibiotics. Everything up here is a generic name, and I'll give you some trade names to go with them here in a second. Amoxicillin. Who has not heard of amoxicillin? Okay? It's amoxicillin. I don't care if it's for birds or if it's for fish or if it's for people. Amoxicillin is amoxicillin. Ceflexin, also known as Keflex. Okay, super good. Oh, let's just go back to amoxicillin. Super good for anything related to the mouth and the digestive system. Animal bites, dental infections, ear infections, upset stomach and diarrhea infections. Yes?
If you have a psyllin allergy, like penicillin,
You can't take it.
you can't take it.
That's why each one of these falls into a different class of drug, of antibiotic. So you've got your psyllins, you've got your cephalosporins, you've got your macrolides, you've got different kinds, your sulfa drugs. Each one of these is a different type of antibiotic. So if you're allergic to one, you can take another one for similar things. Okay? So amoxicillin, anything to deal with the mouth, dental infections, ear infections, animal bites, people bites. If it involves the bacteria growing strep throat, if it involves the stuff in your mouth, amoxicillin is going to work on it. Keflex or Ceflexin is a wonderful drug. It's from the cephalosporin family. It's for wound infections. If you get a cut or something anywhere, surgical or not, that gets infected and it's red and inflamed and painful and oozing pus, Keflex is an excellent drug for that. Metronidazole, also known as Flagyl. Okay? Do you guys remember we talked about Giardia and Cryptosporidium and waterborne illnesses? And I said Cipro and Flagyl are the two preferred drugs for that. Well, you got ciprofloxacin over here and Flagyl. They also work really good for tetanus. The Flagyl does. So if you step on a nail and you start to get tetanus from it, not just stepping on a nail, you don't need to be taking this antibiotic. It's when you wake up at night with a spasm, with muscles that are spasming and tightening up, before you get the lockjaw from tetanus, have some Flagyl on hand. I did that recently. And keep in mind, it's not the rusty nail that's the problem. It's the nail with some sort of poo on it. They originally created tetanus as a poison way, way, way back in the day, and they would take human blood and mix it with animal manure or people manure and create the toxins and then prick you with a pin, and that's how you would kill people with tetanus. It's not the rusty nail. It's the nail that's been around feces. Okay? Big misconception with tetanus. Flagyl is your go-to antibiotic. If you've tried all your herbal stuff and it's not working, Flagyl is good to have on hand for that. Yes, sir?
You ever use lemon juice as an antibacterial?
Mm-hmm. Yep, citrus, again, anything that's going to have a citric acid, change the pH, change the environment where the bacteria like to live is going to work. That's why hydrogen peroxide works. That's why vinegar works, lemon juice, sugar, honey, all those things work by changing the environment to where the bacteria can't survive. Fluconazole. Any of you ladies ever heard of Diflucan? Same thing. Okay, this is wonderful on yeast infections, vaginal infections, thrush in babies and infants, foot fungus, athlete's foot, toe fungus, toenail fungus. If it's fungal related, like an external ear infection, Diflucans work great for that, fungal related stuff. Doxycycline. This is probably one of my favorite respiratory related antibiotics. Pneumonias, bacterial bronchitis. If it's respiratory related, I like doxycycline for it. It's also effective against anthrax, which we do have in this area, especially if you work around sheep. Sheep have been carriers for anthrax for years. So if you start homesteading and you're growing sheep, be aware that you may be exposed to anthrax. It also works on malaria, which is not so much a big problem here, but we do have mosquitoes here. And all it takes is for one person to have been exposed to malaria to spread it to the mosquito population.
So anthrax is naturally occurring?
Yeah. Anthrax is naturally occurring anyway. It creates a spore, and that's how the sheep get it, is they, as they're moving around in the desert and stuff, bedding down, stuff like that, they kick up the spore and it gets on their wool. And so anthrax is not a problem until it leaves that spore state, and then it becomes a problem. That's why the anthrax powder, once you inhale it, then it becomes a problem in your lungs. As long as it's in the powder form, it's totally safe. Just don't get it wet and moist and warm. That's when it leaves the spore form and becomes virulent, becomes toxic.
But doxy you can't store. 2 years, they say, nephrotoxic.
What, doxycycline?
Yeah.
Not true at all.
Oh?
Yep. The military did a study. There are a few drugs that do become toxic. Tetracyclines become toxic. Doxycycline does just fine for up to 10 years.
So what is the say shelf life, storage life?
I'll get that in a second. And as I said, the military did a study of all the different medications and antibiotics and pills that you can take, and which ones become toxic, which ones lose potency, how well do they store. They stopped doing the experiment after 40 years because they didn't notice a big change in most of your medications. If it's in a dry powder form and you keep it cool, preferably below 40 degrees, but anything kept below 70 degrees, kind of like food storage, it can last indefinitely. There's a few that do become toxic. Tetracycline, doxycycline was more stable. That's why I like doxy and not tetracycline, because you can get tetracyclines at pet stores and stuff too. But I don't have it on the list because it becomes toxic after about a year. It can become more toxic to take. Malaria. Anybody who served in the military, do you guys remember getting those little doxy tablets that you take one a day, every day that you were in the Middle East? Anybody here in the military? Oh.
I remember the air shots they used to get.
Yep. Well, in the Middle East, malaria is a big problem. So when I was over there, we had to take doxycycline every day